Have you ever wondered why there are fire extinguishers, fire alarms, and sprinklers in buildings? Well, it was because of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. It was one of the deadliest fires in New York and became a turning point in history, which led to a new building code laws standardizing fire safeguards in New York and around the United States. This deadly incident served as a wake-up call and changed the safety regulations and working conditions within the United States. Garment manufacturing in the 1900s grew due to the increased demand for ready-made garments, especially the shirtwaist. The shirtwaist was a kind of blouse for women and one of the first fashion trends that everyone, regardless of social class, would wear.
Before the fire at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, the working conditions for workers in the industry were difficult. Workers mainly comprised of young immigrant women, some as young as 15. They worked 6 days a week in filthy and unkept conditions. The rooms they worked in were hot and stuffy, with too many workers in small spaces, and unclean bathrooms. The fire escape was in poor condition, and the doors were kept locked so workers would not leave to take bathroom breaks outside the building. Even though they complained to management, nothing got better.
The door always locked? Was that something?
Always.
Why?
Because they were afraid that the people go and steal and get away with the merchandise.
In 1909, the shirtwaist workers banded together for better working conditions. They joined forces with two groups, the International Ladies Garment Workers Union and the Women's Trade Union League, which had both working class and wealthy women. After the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory workers walked out, thousands of other garment workers joined them by going on one big strike.
This strike lasted many months, leading to fewer working hours and higher pay. The Triangle Shirtwaist Company gave in to some concessions, however the factory managers ignored requests for safer conditions like better air quality, adequate fire escape, and keeping doors open. The women were stitching their way to a better life in America in these difficult conditions leading up to the events of the fire. March 25, 1911 was a beautiful Saturday in the garment district of New York City. The 600 garment workers at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory on the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors of the Ash Building were tired and looking forward to their day off. At approximately 4:40 p.m., the fire was believed to have started by a cigarette. The manager of the factory quickly attempted to use the fire hose to extinguish it, but it did not work as the hose was rotten and its valve rusted shut. As the fire grew, panic ensued as the elevator and fire exits were poorly designed and could not safely handle all of the workers. The young workers who tried to exit the building by the elevator found it could only hold 12 people at one time, and the operator made just 4 trips before it broke down amid the heat and flames.
When the fire broke out, it was bedlam. They couldn't get to the elevators. The doors were locked. Women were jumping out of windows.
The workers who fled via the stairwells also met awful demises. They found locked doors, and many were burned alive. The fire attracted attention, and many eyewitnesses directly witnessed the tragedy unfold.
One of the accounts came from William D. Shepard. As he approached the building, he saw the desperation of the woman trying to escape the fire. The trapped woman called for firefighters and ladders to take them to safety. However, the ladders would not reach past the 7th floor. They took out a life net to have the workers jump down, but did not help as they broke through. The crowd that gathered below could hear the screams from the girls on the 9th floor being burnt alive. Within 18 minutes, it was all over, with 146 lives lost. Many died jumping to the sidewalks, and many were burnt alive. Dead bodies were heaped against the doors. Notably, the owner survived. The workers on the floors above the fire, including the owners, escaped to the roof and then to nearby buildings. After the fires were extinguished, the city was horrified. Over 350,000 people attended the funeral march in honor of the victims. There was no music or any sound at all, as the marchers wanted a silent protest. Though it moved in silence, its message was heard. Most of the victims were buried at Mount Zion Cemetery in Queens, New York. Criminal charges were filed, and unfortunately, even after a very public trial, the owners Max Blank and Isaac Harris were not found guilty of manslaughter. To add further insult to injury, in civil trial and the families of the victims only received around $75. This was not even a year of wages for people at the time. The injustice only caused the changes that followed to happen more quickly. Anna Gula was one of the survivors of the fall. She had recently come to the country and prior to the fire had believed that no one in America burns. Her belief in the safety of workers in America was now shaken and broken.
She was not alone. Frances Perkins, who also witnessed the fire, was a strong and educated woman of her time who was already working towards labor reforms before the fire. She watched women who had no exit routes jump to their deaths on the sidewalks. Soon after, the New York City Committee on Safety was created. Frances Perkins became the executive secretary of the New York chapter of the Consumers League. The initial findings of the commission were issued in 1912 and also resulted in the creation of the New York Factory Investigation Commission. It inspected almost 2,000 establishments and talked to over 200 witnesses. Some laws passed by the legislature were registration of factories, fire drills, removal of rubbish, fireproof receptacles for waste materials, prohibition of smoking in factories, lighted exit signs, exit doors that open outward, and having firefighting equipment in the factories.
One of the biggest changes was the passing of the Sullivan-Huey Act. This required the installation of sprinklers to help fight fires on the upper floors where firemen could not reach with the hoses at the time.
The first 4 years of the Commission's existence were called by some the Golden Era in remedial factory legislation. In total, 36 laws regulating safety in the workplace were passed. These laws adopted many of the recommendations of the Commission and incorporated lessons learned from the tragedy of the fire. It also led to a complete reorganization of the bureaucracy and a complete change to policies on safety in the workplace. During that time, the New York State Department of Labor was completely transformed. Frances Perkins later became Secretary of Labor. She played a central role in the passage of the New Deal, which was a series of laws passed between 1933 and 1938 and rewrote labor laws in America. She called the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory the day the New Deal began.
The reforms of the program included the end of child labor, supported higher wages for all workers, and officially recognized the right of workers to organize.
Once located in a busy industrial district, it now sits in the middle of a college campus. The tragedy and its influence are still remembered today, as seen by the memorial that was unveiled on October 11, 2023. The Triangle Fire Memorial is built at the site of the historic Shirtwaist Factory building.
Today, the names of 146 souls who were lost on this site are finally going to be enshrined as part of the fabric and the history of our city.
The monument helps to keep alive the stories of the victims of the fire in the languages spoken by the victims: English, Yiddish, and Italian. It is one of the only memorials dedicated to workers in America. 112 years later, the legacy of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire is one of reform. A tragedy that led to a transformation of workers' rights and the adoption of fire safety standards that are now commonplace for the entire nation. These changes can be seen in almost every modern skyscraper and industrial building.
State-level health and safety standards for factory workers, a nationwide minimum wage, Social Security, the unemployment insurance safety net, and restrictions on child labor.
The modern workplace is almost unrecognizable from the days before the fire. For one, work is far safer. In 2020, there were 4,764 deaths in the workplace compared to between 18,000 to 20,000 in 1913. The changes over time are dramatic, with data from the National Safety Council from 1933 through 1997 indicating that deaths from unintentional work-related injuries declined 90%. Hours and pay are regulated, and now we are much closer to the vision Anna Gullo had about America before this turning point in history.